professional wrestling gimmick is a sure thing, but it's fair to say that certain ones would be colossal failures if they were given to the wrong performer. We've seen enough duds over the years to know that it doesn't take much for a rotten gimmick to sink a wrestler's career, where others have taken on gimmicks that, on the surface, looked like losers, only for them to turn out against all odds to be their ticket to fame and fortune. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 wrestling gimmicks that would have failed in anyone else's hands. Join us.
But first, I would like to have a serious talk about protection. As one of the world's greatest professional wrestlers, I wouldn't dare step into the ring without my knee pads, my elbow pads, and that funny tape they all tend to wear now. No idea what it does. However, when I'm out of the squared circle and need to stay protected online, I rely on NordVPN. Cheers to Nord for sponsoring this video. We at Cultaholic truly believe that Nord is the best service of its kind. Let me tell you how I use it. So, I'm a cheapskate, obviously, and using Nord means that I can set my location to pretty much anywhere in the world and sign up for video-on-demand services that I wouldn't normally have access to, or get them much cheaper than where I live. That means cheaper movies, cheaper TV shows, cheaper premium live events. Catch my drift? On top of that, it protects against password attacks, phishing, ransomware, malware. I use it to book cheaper flights, hotels. It's the fastest VPN in the world, and it can even be used on up to 10 devices. It's seriously an investment worth making, costs the equivalent of a cup of coffee a month, and there's even a 30-day money-back guarantee. So, if Nord isn't for you, you can get your money back, no bother at all. So, to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, head to nordvpn.com/cultaholic. Our link gives you a huge discount, plus an extra 4 free months off the 2-year plan. Don't worry, you already know the link is in the description below. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the video.
Number 10, the Hurricane. As either Shane Helms or Gregory Helms, the North Carolina native was just another talented cruiserweight in a pair of trunks and boots. And that's all well and good, but there were plenty of those around, and they didn't tend to last too long in WWE. What did last in WWE was the Hurricane, the super fun superhero alter ego of Helms. Debuting during the Invasion storyline, the Hurricane became an instant hit with the fans, thanks to Helms committing to the bit and not being afraid to make himself look like a fool when the situation called for it. But the Hurricane was no mere comedy jobber, and Helms, who was a genuine comic book buff, parlayed his popularity into runs as Cruiserweight and World Tag Team Champ, not to mention a brief program with The Rock in the run-up to WrestleMania 19, which saw him score an elusive victory against the Great One. Helms ditched the mask and cape in order to have a run as a heel under his own name, but fans wanted the Hurricane, and it was celebrated when he brought it back. What could have been a short-lived one-note gimmick turned into something that Helms and only Helms was able to do for 20 years. Number 9, the Boogeyman. Alright, hear me out. Marty Wright, who was kicked off the 4th season of WWE Tough Enough after lying about his age, was not a very good professional wrestler. However, he had the look and a certain kind of charisma that compelled the company to sign him to a developmental deal anyway. And it was while in OVW that Wright created the Boogeyman character, and what a character it was. Completely ludicrous on the face of things, of course. I mean, an evil monster man with a big red face who eats worms and smashes clocks over his head. It just shouldn't have worked, but it did, because Marty Wright was so into portraying the Boogeyman and went above and beyond in his bid to entertain the masses. The Boogeyman character, which could have easily been the crappiest of all wrestle crap, became so popular that he still makes occasional appearances to this day, some 2 decades after his initial debut. And just as long as he doesn't have to actually wrestle, that's fine with me. Number 8, Orange Cassidy. I like to consider myself pretty damn good at doing nothing. In fact, if you tasked me with doing sod all for the rest of my life, I reckon I'd be able to accomplish that, no questions asked. But as good as I am at putting in little to no effort, I am not in the same league as Orange Cassidy. Freshly Squeezed has become a cult hero by letting fans know that he really doesn't give a toss, to the point where it's a novelty when he actually properly tries. The New Jersey journeyman worked on the indies for an age, most most notably as Fire Ant for promotions like Chikara, before perfecting the gimmick that would make him a major star in AEW. The so-called King of Sloth style might seem like an easy gimmick on the surface, but the man behind it really has perfected the art of getting a lot out of very little, somewhat ironically putting in a lot of time and energy into making Orange Cassidy all it can be. A true utility player, Cassidy can be put anywhere on the card, from an opening multi-man tag to a title match main event, and he just works. In the hands of a lesser performer, the shtick would have worn thin long ago. Come at me, comment section. Number 7, Doink the Clown. Nobody would begrudge you for assuming that the Doink the Clown gimmick came directly from the demented brain of Vince McMahon, but that's not actually the case. It was really Road Warrior Hawk who was responsible for Doink, as he saw the curmudgeonly Matt Bourne, looking particularly surly that day, sitting in the WWE locker room and smoking a cigarette, compelling him to blurt out, "Krusty the Clown!" Hawk took the pitch to Vince, and all of a sudden, Bourne had a new gimmick, a gimmick that very quickly became a cult hit with WWE fans. Many men have played Doink since Bourne's initial run as the character, but nobody has done it as well, and I would argue that the only reason the clown has been able to be brought back so often is down to how successful it was when Bourne was under the paint. Yes, anyone can slap on a clown suit and some makeup and pull pranks, but Bourne was Doink and had a certain uneasy quality that just made it work. In the hands of anyone else on the roster in the early 90s, they would just look like a bozo, or possibly the bozo. Number 6, Razor Ramon. A big white guy trying to talk like a Cuban while doing his best Tony Montana impression could have been a career killer if it was being done by anyone besides Scott Hall. The bad guy avoided a go-nowhere G.I. Joe gimmick by launching into his Scarface routine during a meeting with Vince McMahon, who had never seen the seminal 1980s gangster film. The thing about Hall is that besides being a great worker with an excellent look, the man was just cool, something which cannot be taught. And I'm speaking from experience here. $8,000 down the drain at Cool University, and here I am, still an absolute bellend. Sorry, yeah, Hall was cool, and he had the requisite machismo to pull the character off without anyone crapping on it for being derivative or insensitive. And if you want proof that Scott Hall was the only person who could pull the Razor Ramon gimmick off, need I remind you that Vince McMahon literally gave the gimmick to Rick Bogner after Hall jumped ship to WCW, and it died a miserable death. Number 5, Goldust. Dustin Runnels was a tobacco-chewing, country music-listening good old boy from the South who wrestled as a rugged babyface for WCW. But when he needed a job and WWE offered him the chance to play a new androgynous character, he accepted without hesitation, despite not knowing what the word androgynous actually meant. Still, he accepted the challenge of playing something so wildly different from his own personality, and while it took him a few months to get to grips with Goldust, he took the ball and ran with it, creating one of the most unique personas in wrestling history. Runnels threw himself into the role, saying and doing things on television that many would have balked at in order to get the character over. And you know what? It worked, as the Bizarre One remained an over-commodity for an age, regardless of how he changed across more than 2 decades and various runs. There's probably close to zero chance that the Goldust character, if given to literally anyone else, would have been half as effective or had anywhere near the longevity it did with Big Dustin. He made sure we remembered the name. Number 4, Timeless Toni Storm. When Toni Storm emerged in AEW, her appearance, style, and character were very similar to what she had done on the Indies, in Japan, and in WWE beforehand. As a member of the Outcast stable, Storm was a pushed member of the roster and was good for 2 runs as AEW Women's Champion. After dropping the title the second time to Hikaru Shida at Dynamite 200, however, something in Toni changed. She turned on the Outcasts and took on the persona of a demanding starlet from Hollywood's golden age, ditching the rock star aesthetic for vintage glam. It was such a departure that many fans, at least initially, didn't know what to make of it. It didn't take long, however, to see the genius behind Timeless Toni Storm. Fully committed to the bit, Storm, bolstered by her personal butler Luther and understudy Mariah May, was an absolute riot in angles and promos, with a deep well of quips and quirky comments to draw from, as she often spoke directly to the camera during matches. Her feud with May after being turned on was one of the best in recent memory, and it wouldn't have been half as good with anyone other than Toni Storm doing a gimmick that is proving to be, well, timeless. Number 3, Mankind. Vince McMahon only agreed to hire Mick Foley after much pestering from Foley fan Jim Ross on the condition that they cover up his face with a mask. Brought in as a monster to feud with The Undertaker, Foley was initially given the name Mason the Mutilator before they mercifully settled on Mankind instead. Foley wasn't exactly thrilled with the pitch as he had enjoyed so much success in WCW and internationally as Cactus Jack, but he endeavored to give it a try and put everything he had into ensuring Mankind did not flop. Had a less talented wrestler been the man in the leather mask, it really may well have, but Foley properly gave it everything he had, and in an era where plenty of cartoonish characters failed, his thrived. Not only was Foley so giving physically, willing to take whatever bumps he felt necessary to get the match, his opponent, and himself over, he was also willing to show a lot of vulnerability in promos and segments. It was this vulnerability and Foley's inherent likability that allowed him to become a beloved babyface and multi-time world champion just a couple of years after his debut. Number 2, Bray Wyatt. Wyndham Rotunda, like so many who graduated from WWE's developmental system at the time, had a rough go of it during his first run on the main roster. Nexus member Husky Harris didn't exactly light anyone's world on fire, and getting sent back to developmental turned out to be a big blessing for the second-generation wrestler. Not too long after, he introduced us to Bray Wyatt, the swamp-dwelling cult leader of your nightmares. Though Bray and the rest of the Wyatt family were over the top in some respects, the reason he and they caught on so quickly and strongly is because, as Bray himself pointed out, he was being real to himself. No, he wasn't a Charles Manson-like messiah hell-bent on doing evil things IRL, but a lot of what the Bray Wyatt character was saying was true to what Wyndham Rotunda believed and felt. His fearlessness when throwing himself into a character also ensured that his outlandish fiend persona, polarizing as it was, didn't completely torpedo his WWE career the way it probably would have done to just about anyone else but the incredibly talented and creative Wyndham Rotunda. Number 1, The Undertaker. The way Mark Calloway tells it, one day after meeting with Vince McMahon, he received a phone call from WWE's then owner who simply asked, "Hello, is this The Undertaker?" Calloway, not entirely grasping what was going on, answered in the affirmative, and the rest is history. The gimmick of a zombie mortician who moved at the speed of a glacier and barely showed any emotion would have doubtless sank and fast had it been entrusted to anybody else. But Calloway was able to make The Undertaker one of the most popular and enduring characters in wrestling history, thanks in large part to his unwavering dedication to protecting the gimmick no matter what. That meant staying in character at all times and refusing to drop the act in public, whether he was eating at a restaurant or traveling to the arena. This commitment to upholding kayfabe set the dead man apart and helped Calloway maintain his aura of mystique. It also helped that he was a big athletic bastard who loved the business and was determined to get to the top after disappointing spells as Punisher Dice Morgan and Mean Mark Callis elsewhere. Taker's popularity and ability to evolve across several decades is a testament to the talent of Mark Calloway and another big W for zombie morticians the world over.